listening to the Living Inside Out podcast, and I'm your host, Toks. This is episode 99. And today I have Suzy Bannerman. You already know Suzy. Suzy has been mentioned 1,001 times on the podcast. Suzy is the Suzy in my TED Talk. If I ever say the word Suzy, the name Suzy, there's only one in my life, and this is her. And she is my precious gem, ride or die. She's everything. Welcome to the show, Suzy.
Hi, Toks. Hi, all.
Nice to have you.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time. So we were supposed to have done lessons learned in 2022.
Yeah.
Then lessons learned in 2023.
Yeah.
And the 2023 lessons were supposed to have been recorded January this year, and now we're in July. That's because we are so busy that we just have not been able to do it. So we have a lot of wisdom to share, life lessons, catching up to do. I'm so excited, and you're in for a ride. But before we begin, if you haven't subscribed to this podcast yet, what are you waiting for?
Hit the button.
Hit the button, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, then hit subscribe, and also don't forget to rate us and recommend us to your friends. You can do this by sending them the link, but we really need you to subscribe because every little subscription helps. So how have you been?
Very good. How about you?
I've been good, but you know, because we talk every day, so I've been good. And so we thought that we will catch up again. We haven't done this in a while. Our very first video together was 2021, 3 years ago, and it was amazing, wasn't it? Like, everyone loved it, and the lessons. We shared a clip of it the other day on social media, and got a few nice responses, so thank you. And so today we are catching up, and we are coming up with we're revealing and sharing our newest lessons.
Yeah.
What's been happening? What's the first lesson that stood out for you last year?
Last year, something that I've really tried to focus on is being intentional. Being intentional with my actions, with my plans, with the people that I have around me. So
when you say being intentional, what do you mean?
I mean, I now think a lot more about how I live life, the decisions I make, the people around me. I don't let life happen to me. I try to walk through life with intentionality so that it's a bit more structured. My life is a bit more structured because I feel like before I was so busy that I was letting life happen to me.
I get that.
And then I'm easily distracted. But because I start off with intention, my tasks are intentional. If I want to go somewhere, there has to be a reason why I want to go. I just don't go to things because I'm invited anymore,
right?
Or because so and so is going. Do I really want to go? And why am I going? What am I going to give when I get there? And what am I going to get when I get there?
Right.
I think also in the long term, especially when I'm dealing with tasks or goals that are quite complex and difficult, being intentional helps push me towards the goal rather than sort of get weary or give up when it gets difficult, or get distracted. So I think once the intention is there, your outcome or your output is more qualified, if that makes sense.
Right, that makes so much sense. So how do you then deal with, obviously we're halfway into, we've just started the second half of 2024, and you set goals at the start of the year.
Yeah,
how do you you've always done that. So do you always smash your goals?
I have never.
I love the honesty. So what's your process for, I got this goal, I'm inching towards July, and I haven't, how do you recognize, first of all, that you haven't hit the goal? And what's the thought process? How do you deal with it?
Okay, so I have a number of goals at the beginning of the year, and I go through the goals and I, try and tick as much as possible off. I work with a list. Everyone knows I'm always making lists, and my intention is to try and cross out as many goals as I can. I have big goals and I have small goals. That's very important because the big things are more strategic. I work through them throughout the year. Whereas the smaller things, like maybe things around the house, or I want to visit Paris or wherever it is, that's something you can just cross off. Okay. So I try to make, I try to have the smaller goals in between the bigger goals. And so I do feel a sense of accomplishment at the end of the year because I have accomplished a lot of stuff. Some of the big goals may take 2 years to accomplish as opposed to one. So I may not complete them this year, but historically, I'll look over my goals and it might have taken 18 months, but it's been accomplished even if I don't miss it in this year. And I don't really go through life kicking myself about the goals that I haven't completed. One thing, I live from a place of gratitude.
Right, I love that.
So I'm grateful for the day. I'm grateful for each day I wake up. I'm grateful for good health. I really practice gratitude. So it doesn't make me regret or feel bad because I haven't accomplished a goal. My goal is to live today as best as I can.
Okay.
Because really tomorrow's not promised to any of us. So I think, with all of the plans that we have, I have this thing in my house that says, we all plan, but God makes the decisions. And it's right by my door, so I say it every morning. And that to me means I can plan, I have my goals, I strive very hard to achieve the goals. However, if I don't make it, I don't beat myself up about it. The important thing is I enjoy the journey, I enjoy the process, I have fun, I bless people, I give, I contribute to people's lives. And once I'm doing that, I think that's in itself is the goal.
Yeah. I agree with you. I have historically been inspired or motivated by not wanting to regret things. So there are some things that I've done because I just don't want to have regrets. So an example of that is my boys, for some weird reason, when they were born, I just had this thing that what if something were to happen to me? I'm the only one that can truly love them. So my goal then became, let me leave a toolbox, a toolkit for them to follow, a life kit for them to continue through life if I'm not here. And that's when the whole life lessons came from. And Joshua, when Joshua was little, he would say to me, "Oh, Mom, everything doesn't have to be a life lesson. Oh, not again, another lesson." And he would say that repeatedly. And I didn't care because I just thought, I just don't want to come to the end of my life and regret that I had this time with you to pour into you and I didn't take it. But I definitely, for me, one of the lessons when you were talking about goals and now that we're starting 2024 part 2, the second half of it, it's interesting that the lesson I'm learning at the moment is on procrastination. So a few months, I think it was in the month of March, and if you've been listening to the Living Inside Out podcast, you'd have heard me talk about time when I was learning, and I call them buzzwords, when I have this season where everywhere I turn, I'm just hearing or seeing the same thing. And I know in that moment, God is teaching me, saying this, you need to pause everything and pay attention to this lesson. So the lesson on time started around the month of March. And everywhere I turned, I was seeing time. And one morning I was reading, and I reading Ecclesiastes chapter 3 that says there's a time to plan, there's a time to reap and everything. And I just got this knowing, this epiphany, revelation is what I should really call it, that time is not merely the measure of how long a thing takes. So generally in the world today, most of us just say, hey, it took me 2 hours to do this, or it's going to take me 3 days to do that. And we use time to measure the period between the start and the end of an affair, of a thing, right? And God said to me that time is actually not merely a unit of measurement. It's a unit of potency. And that the way that you have a molecule that contains life, a molecule contains a cell, contains a nucleus, and it has, I can't remember what the other ones are, nucleus, proton, no, that's electron, whatever it is. No.
Yeah, please.
So I learned that time was not just a unit of measurement, time was a unit of potency. The same way that life is contained in a molecule or in a cell, and literally you have the fullness of a life in a cell, is how you have the fullness of life in time, in the smallest unit of time. And what that means is that every second of the day has the ability to create something amazing.
Yeah.
However, the creation only happens when an action is taken at the time it's supposed to happen. So where the scripture says there's a time to reap, there's a time to plant. If you plant in the season when it's supposed to be reaping time, you're not going to get the results that you want. If you take an action outside of the time in which that action has been scheduled to produce fruit, it's not going to happen. So another example is the jigsaw puzzle. You have two different pieces of puzzle. Just because they look like they would fit doesn't mean that they will. So in the same way, you cannot procrastinate on something and expect to get the same result.
Yeah.
And that's been really guiding my thinking a lot since since around Easter time to now, has been, if I do things in the wrong time, and the wrong time is not going to look wrong to anybody else, but I know when the inspiration comes, I know when I'm supposed to do it. Hesitation stops you doing it on time. Procrastination permits you to keep postponing it. And so I've got to make sure that I'm doing things in the time that was pre-assigned for the thing to be done. So that's been my whole lesson. So just for this, especially at this time of the year, I'm looking back, I've come to a place of peace. So I don't have regrets. And I do recognize what I could have done and I didn't do, but I've also been learning the lesson about blame. So and blame and guilt. The thing as well is that I find that many of us focus so much on the action, but we don't focus on the time in which we take the action. And we assume that if I do it tomorrow, I'm going to get the same result. Well, we're not. So in this season, I really have been focusing a lot on what am I procrastinating on, and I even saw that happen today. Just a phone call I made to somebody, the timing in which I made the call and the conversation I had with them was perfect. The timing was divine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you've seen that as well in your own life, where it looks like, wow, this was a serendipitous moment. But in reality, you took the right action. You took action at the time the action was meant to be taken, and that always produces fruit.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote that I heard a few years ago, and somebody said, "Don't waste your grace."
Yes, I love that.
And it just spoke about when you have a window of opportunity. That window could be to take action or to prepare or to just position yourself for the opportunity. And when you don't, that is your grace period.
Yes.
So when you procrastinate and you hesitate and you procrastinate and you're not doing what you need to do in that time, when you do come to do it, it's not as effective because you have wasted the grace period. You have procrastinated, you haven't sown, you haven't worked the land, you haven't prepared the soil, and then you're not able to reap a full harvest because you wasted your grace.
And then in addition to that, then what happens is you end up using the energy meant for producing to getting yourself into a space where you can produce. And but procrastination is definitely one of the thieves of our destinies, just any type whatsoever. The thing as well I notice is that it's always so logical, it's always so logical. It makes sense to do it the next day. I've got to say this one lesson I learned. This was my, I think my first lesson in 2024. Yes, it was. So I was going to share this on the podcast as well. So I was going from Nigeria to the UK, and I went through Frankfurt and got to the airport in Frankfurt, and all of a sudden I started having this tummy ache. And I'm like not sure what's going on, and it starts getting worse and worse. It was like a movie, and I realized I had food poisoning. And this was from the airline. So not the suya, not the agege bread, not the jollof rice. It was the airline, and Silimi had salad. I know not to have salad outside because you just don't know how they prepared it, but I did. So I put my hand on my belly to pray, and there have been times when I'm about to pray for something and I know there's no way it's not going to be answered. There's of course been times when I pray and nothing happens, but this one I mustered up all of the faith inside me and put my hand on my belly, took a deep breath. We're going to get healed. Nothing happened. And then I feel like this lesson was last year or this year, anyway. And then I just kept praying, and I just realized, like, God, what's going on here? And I heard God say to me, this is hard, but you can handle it. And I thought, okay, I really did not think I could handle it. I was in an absolute state. Forget all the germs and everything. I had my head practically in a toilet loo, retching my gut out. I was just on the floor like that the whole time. It got so bad that the airline nearly didn't let me fly because they thought that I wouldn't make it all the way to London. It was only an hour's flight. I had thankfully had one of the crew seat next to me, and they got me fennel tea, and I just took the tea and put it on my belly and I just kept praying, and I said, I just need to make it to London. I just need to make it to London. And then I dozed off for what may have been 5 minutes. And I remember as I was dozing off, I thought, whatever it is I thought was hard in life was not hard. This is hard. And if I survive this, I can handle anything. Now, you might think to yourself that, hey, it's just food poisoning. Everybody's had food poisoning. We know it's not going to kill you. And that's true, but it's not about the circumstance, which is another lesson, by the way. It's not about the circumstance I was in. It was about my perspective and what my perspective was telling me, that in that moment, I was in a dire situation that I would not be able to survive. And because I did, it then became a reference point for other things later on. And I actually came back to the UK, and I had a major issue in the business that I had to deal with. And I kept thinking, and every time I like, God, this is too hard. And I would hear, you can handle it. So that's
beautiful.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. This going back to when you were saying about the boys and you not wanting them to miss out, and you try to pour all of everything into them. And I said I did the same thing for Jessica.
Yes.
That I'm very transparent with her about my lessons, what I've been through, and I always say to her, because I don't want her to go through this. Because I feel like I've spent years learning some lessons that really, if I don't know if I would listen, but
if you had been told,
or if I had a bit more guidance.
But this is where I also feel that God handpicks us for our children, because I believe that your path and your life was needed for her. you know, one of the mistakes we made was the place we met, that organization. In fact, organization that we met in, and we were there for years. We were not supposed to have been there. We knew we were in the wrong place, but we stuck it out and we stayed there. But I always say that now, where I feel I wasted 10 years of my life there, I always say to my husband that, you know what, we didn't waste 10 years of our lives there. We spent 10 years to protect our boys from falling into that sort of space.
Yeah.
So our lives are, I believe, and then lessons my mom, you know, I look at my mom's life, and she's also been very open with me, like you are with Jess, and there are experiences that she's had, very specific ones that that I learned. And so when I got married, and I was watching and I could see the potential for such a thing happening. I was like, no, we're drawing the boundary line. This is going to happen. So
no, very true.
Yes.
Another lesson I've learned is to find your tribe, and when you find your tribe, to appreciate your tribe. And finding your tribe is a very long process. It takes years, because I think as people come into your life and leave your life, some stay and some become very close, and they become your tribe. They're people who wish you well, they're people who show up for you. They're not good time friends. They're people who are there when the times are hard, and they stick with you through it. They pray with you. They show up for you. Not everybody has that. And when you have those people in your life, you don't take them for granted. And we need to actively practice good behavior. Is that the right word? So being intentional is one, appreciating your tribe is another, being grateful, living from a place of gratitude is another. And be grateful for your tribe, because I think more than anything, that's what pulls you through. You know, not the money. There are many people with money that are depressed and lonely because they do not have people around. It's having people to share your life with. If you have everything but no one to share it with, no one to enjoy with, no one to come to your house. You know, I know somebody who bought a house and nobody came, nobody visited them, and they felt, you know, it was not a very nice experience for them.
Your joy is doubled when you share it.
And I know people with big homes that nobody visit, but people with smaller homes there's always a vibe, there's always life, it's always warm. So it's really building the tribe that is right for you, and to make sure that your tribe are full of people who have good intentions, because not everybody around you means you well. They don't even intentionally mean you harm, but they just don't celebrate you. And you need people who will celebrate your wins and then support you with your losses as well. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Thanks for being in my tribe, Suzy.
Thank you for being in my tribe.
I've got a tight tribe. I feel incredibly blessed because of the women in my life. I hung out with Tommy today. I've got Titi, who's helping with my website. I've got Olga. I just feel really, really blessed, because when I think about you guys, I see myself in the middle and I see you all around me, but I don't see you facing me. I see your backs turned to me, because you're watching everything around me, and you're protecting me and, you know, keeping me safe. So I feel I am incredibly blessed. And we've met people who, after being in conversation with a short time, were like, this person, you know, they might refer to a friend of theirs, and when they say what they said, they're like, oh my goodness, why would you
said that?
Why? Exactly. And there are even people, right, that we have identified and said, you know, you watch their lives and you think, for you to think and speak the way you do today, it's evident that you didn't have someone speaking to you
Yeah.
into your life, you know, from when you were young.
Yeah. One of the examples that I always talk about is Jason. When I used to be a hothead. I used to be a hothead, guys. I really did. When I was younger, I feel like I had no patience, not much wisdom, and I used to just get upset quite quickly. I remember one day Jason, he lost it with me actually, let's be real. He lost it with me. You're a hothead, Suzy, you're a hothead. I never forget that conversation. That delivered me. It delivered me and I appreciated that. I didn't take offense. He's my brother. He loves me. He meant well for me. And, you know, it was difficult to swallow, but it was also important that somebody said that to me, because if you go through life and people don't tell you, I feel like you're a poor person, you know? It's good to have people who will speak the truth into your life and for you to be gracious enough to accept it. Because it's not easy to receive negative. It wasn't even negative. I shouldn't say negative.
Well,
like
criticism, even if it's constructive,
it's not because we don't see ourselves.
And then sometimes we interpret it to mean I'm being put down. You know,
But you see, when you have a good tribe and you know that their intention is, when you know that their intention for you is from a good place.
It's always a case of they want you to be better. You know, they're not trying to put you down. They just want you to be better. I think that's definitely one of the markers for handpicking friends, you know. Just really. And for me, one of the many blessings of my life is the fact that I went to boarding school.
You always say that.
I went to boarding school, and I can't wait. We've got our reunion coming up next week, so I can't wait to meet my school friends again. But I remember when we had our first reunion about, I think it was 6 years ago, and it was the first time we were all seeing was it 4 years ago? Well, however long ago it was. It was the first time we were seeing each other after secondary school. We hadn't seen each other at all. And I remember being apprehensive because I didn't know what people were. People are different. Obviously, we've all grown up. We're all adults. We were kids. We were 16 when we left. Now we're all grown up. How are people going to respond to us, to me? The people who may have had beef with me as a kid, do they still have and then boarding house, secondary school generally is that age where you're developing and you're coming into your own, and that's also where a lot of uncertainty and insecurity is bred. So any insecurities I had as a child was threatening to resurface as I was heading to the hotel that day. And I remember telling myself, well, just be calm. If you don't get along with anyone, and I wasn't even worried about getting along with people. I was worried about people being offish with me. I felt like people might feel like they're too much, that sort of thing. And then we got into the lobby and I saw them, and it was like being a child again. Honestly, the joy was so genuine, and it was for all of us. We were freaking out and just screaming and hugging. And I realized then that the friendships that you make in childhood have an extra special touch to it, because the bonds are formed during a time of innocence and purity, before we got marred by the world, before cynicism set in and layers of issues came into the picture. But that's really good. But even in saying that, you and I only met, how old is Aaron? Aaron is 24, right? So we met about 23, 24 years ago. And I do feel blessed that even though we didn't grow up together, it feels like we did. And I mentioned Tommy recently, and I've only known Tommy for less than 6 months, but she meeting her, she felt like, this is my person,
And you recognize your tribe. You recognize people who resonate with your values, your beliefs. And likewise, we repel.
Right.
We repel those who don't. And don't feel guilty, guys. it's actually a very good thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, because it just saves you a lot of problems, a lot of trouble.
And not to force, don't force,
yeah.
don't force friendships. I mean, when you talked about repelling, I realized that that's one thing authenticity does. I talk about authenticity a lot on the podcast because it became the foundation of my growth. You know, when God said to me, I want you to live life exactly how I created you to be. I don't need you to embellish yourself. I don't need you to add to who you are. I need you to live from the core of who you are because you're enough. And I now realize that when you're authentic, you repel some people.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing because it means that they're not meant to be in your tribe, right? They're supposed so you attract the right people to you, and then you repel the wrong people. So that's another.
I think a lesson that I have learned is to trust my gut, to trust that the compass within me, the inner being of me, we have instincts, and sometimes only you can make a decision, regardless of how many voices chime in. Only you know the right decision for your situation. And the reason why I say that is because I feel like only you know the fullness of all the different components that you need to make that decision.
Yes.
You might only know 90% of it. Somebody else may only know 30% of it. Another person may know 10% of it. They're all chiming in, but only I know the 100%.
That's
so I feel that it's really important to follow your gut and make very important decisions independently with God. Because I've had situations in life when I've listened to people who are wiser than me, and they are wiser than me. I mean, I'm not saying they're not, they are wiser than me. And I've followed people who I've respected, and I've realized that I should have made that decision myself.
Right.
Because, you know, with all their wisdom and all their good intentions, I knew what I should have done and I didn't. And it was very costly.
Yeah.
So I have learned to collate the data from everybody and then to make my decision.
Make your own decision.
And
why do you think we prefer to trust other people's views over ours? What are some of the reasons you think?
I think for me, I didn't trust that I was making, I didn't want to make the wrong decision.
Okay.
Especially when the people around you seem to be saying the same thing.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yeah, safety
and then
numbers.
You just think, oh, you know, they're all saying
Everyone
the
is
same
saying,
thing.
yeah,
but I knew that you know something,
yeah.
I shouldn't go this way, or I shouldn't, and I didn't, because, you know, on the surface, how they were drawing their conclusion was correct.
Right.
But for me, for my situation,
life,
it wasn't what I should have done. And I think it's, I don't know if it's fear, and if it's the fear of me not listening and then getting it wrong, and backlash. But then I knew what was right for me, and I should have taken a chance. I should have trusted myself enough. So I feel like just listening to your guts and following the Holy Spirit, you know, just listening to God, hearing from God. And one of the other lessons that I have learned, and what I would like to share, is knowing how God speaks to you. You know, because I think God speaks to all of us in different ways, and you just need to know the voice of God for you, how God speaks to you, so that you recognize, because there's a lot of people who talk wisdom, they speak, they say the right things, they have good intentions, but it does not mean it's God's plan for
Right.
you. So it's to really have a close enough relationship with God where you have that peace that passes all understanding, that you know that this is directed from God. And I think that's really important, is to know when God is speaking to you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I certainly agree. I think that knowing the voice of God trumps everything else. But it only comes with practice. That's one thing that I'm grateful for about getting older. I confess that getting to 50 filled me with a little bit of trauma. I wasn't ready. I had this wrong mindset that said, when you hit 50, it's over. Everything is.
Because once it's over,
Life is over. Don't you think? When I was a kid, 50 was like you're old at 50.
they were. But this is the new 50.
Right. I just really felt so. It stayed. That's why the words you hear and the conclusions you draw from childhood really do matter. I just thought so. When I turned 50 before I turned 50, because when I hit 49, I was like, you have 1 year, Toks. You've got 1 year. After that,
There was a spring.
yeah. So as I got closer and closer, every little thing was, it's because I'm almost 50. It's because I'm almost 50. And then I began to, I've got grays on the left side of my head. I don't know why it's growing like that, but boy, no, I cover my grays. I'm not ready to show. I shared this on the podcast. It's not even going to happen anytime soon. I'm going to be, maybe it's on 78, 79 by God's grace. And maybe I'll start letting the news show. Black hair and gray eyebrows. But yeah, but with age comes wisdom. So for some of us, the wisdom has to be beaten into us. And for me, recognizing the voice of God is one thing, and the mistakes I've made when I know God is speaking to me, but I'm like, no, but this is more logical. And that's another lesson I learned recently, which is that, first of all, our world, we all live in our own worlds. So yes, there is the big old world everybody is in, but we all really live in our own unique worlds. And our worlds are made up of our thoughts. And whatever you're thinking forms the walls of your world. And within that world, there are three, what would you call them? Not elements, but there are three functions of that world of how you perceive and how you interpret and how you operate: logic, senses, and emotions. So things always have to be either logical before you do them. You need to perceive it with your eyes or your ears, sensually, or your emotions, and you're like, this feels good, this makes me happy. But those three factors, or those three, only function within the physical world. In the spirit world, where it really does matter, which is the causal realm. I feel like I'm going off in a totally. Am I making sense to you?
Yeah, you're making
sense. Okay. In the spirit realm, which is the causal realm, which is where things really do happen, your senses, your logic, and your emotions don't function there. So we tend to draw conclusions and make decisions based on those 3 points, and we think it's the truth and it's the be all and end all, but there is more. It's just that we can't detect it.
Yeah.
But age does that to you. The older you get, the more you walk with Christ, the more mature you become. And you start to not only recognize the voice of God, but you recognize that a lot of the things God says are not going to be logical. So a lot of the instructions won't be logical. A lot of the journeys, the paths that you walk on will be emotionally hijack you, because you'll be scared. And a lot of times there isn't. My favorite thing about the senses is when the children of Israel were about to cross the Red Sea. So they had the Egyptians pursuing them, and they got there, and behind them was the Egyptians, and ahead of them was the Red Sea. They were trapped, and as far as they could see, there was no way. So sensually, there was no way, but there was a way. It's just that it was invisible. It was under
Yeah.
the water. So God had to part the water and say, walk through here. So learning that everything you perceive with your emotions, your logic, or your senses isn't all that there is, and there is more beyond, is what you first have to accept. And then when the voice of God comes, when you start to listen to God and you start to hear, you can believe it because it does not tick any of those three boxes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just living by sight is just so limiting.
Right.
There is more, as you've just said, than just this. And that's where you get the fullness of life, when you're able to just completely be in a situation, feel the situation, and for lack of a better term, rise above it.
Love it. Yeah.
Rise above the situation and not let it shake you.
So true.
And to be honest with you, there's so many storms that I've just stood still in and just let them pass,
Right.
rather than trying to fight against them. And sometimes that's how we can just get through this life, because it's not everything that you must react to, not everything that you must run with. Sometimes you need to just be still,
Right.
and be in the spirit. And I'm not trying to say don't react to, don't be practical, because there are times when you need to be practical, but there's times when just things don't make sense. And when it doesn't make sense, just get on your knees.
And just receive the peace.
Yeah.
Receive the peace.
Some things are out of our control.
I agree.
And we need to believe.
Right.
And that's where faith comes in. And I know not everybody's a person, people of faith, but I am, you are, and I kind of feel like sometimes I think, how do people live without faith?
I know. It's it must be very
limiting.
It must be very limiting to know that the buck begins and ends with you. Thank you so much, Suzy. This has been a blast, as always. And if you've got somebody or you want to be a guest on the Living Inside Out podcast, please send an email to pa@toksaruturi.com or send me a DM wherever you are. And I would so love to have you, because I think everyone's tired of just having my voice. Even I did. You know, what happened was I was listening to a podcast recently, and I normally listen to my podcast while driving, so I've never had to use videos until this one time I decided to pause and rest, and I'm sitting down, it was last Saturday, with my laptop, and I'm listening to a podcast. I'm like, where's the video? I had to pause. I'm like, where is the video? I don't want to just sit down. And so now I get it. And my team have been on my case for videos, so I get it now. So we're going to do more of these.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Toks. It's been a blast.
It has been a blast, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and to like and to share, and we will see you next time.